Hi, this is Black Krishna or BK from manfulwars.com, where I'm promoting polite patriotism to help nice ladies and gents teach kids to be, look, talk, and feel great, and locally discuss and share great online info offline as better people make it better places to live. So check out manfulwars.com for more on that. Online is fine, but often censored in digital ghettos, so the offline info war, including locally having meetings, meet and greet tables, posters, flyers, and more, can really help wake the neighbors and get better stuff done for the hood. So check it out as you'd like. But this video is called "The Woke NBA Cucks and Just How Bad Are Communist Chinese Concentration Camps Anyway." The woke NBA cucks and just how bad are communist Chinese concentration camps anyway. So by now you may be familiar with the story. Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey put out a tweet, a simple little tweet, simply saying, "Stand with the Hong Kong protesters." The Chinese government and establishment had a major backlash against Daryl Morey, the Houston Rockets basketball team, and the NBA in general. The NBA weighed in with Commissioner Adam Silver and the NBA releasing statements like, "Well, we are sorry that this is upsetting you, but we support people's right to free speech, but there are consequences. You got to be careful, but." And so they're kind of going kind of back and forth, and it's a whole issue, right? And all of this is going on where the average NBA fan may not know just how bad Chinese concentration camps are. And this is something to really understand, because if you know, then you'll understand why it's so important to take a stand on these issues and how hypocritical it is for the NBA and players who claim to be woke, all about social justice, all about stopping police brutality against blacks and so on, and other issues, how it's so hypocritical for them to take such firm stands domestically in the United States and yet kind of turn a blind eye to China for their business interests over there. And the NBA's been in China for over 30 years. They've got a great relationship with the Chinese government-run businesses over there, and everything's Chinese government-run to some degree because it's a communist Chinese dictatorship. So they've got to walk a fine line. I understand that. It's a lot easier to make statements when you don't have as much skin in the game. But at the same time, this is a huge learning experience for everybody involved on the outside to take a look at what's really going on. And I'm a huge NBA fan myself. I love NBA junk food. I'm a huge Toronto Raptors fan. Celebrated when they won the championship. I like NBA gossip and junk food, as I say. I like it expressly because it's not political. Everything else is kind of political, and a lot of that stuff isn't. It's sort of black and white. Here's the facts. Here's the game. And of course, the sport itself is amazing, and the athletes are amazing. So I'm a fan of the NBA, but at the same time, that doesn't make them or anybody else above reproach when it comes to criticism in this area. So let's take a look at a brief history of the controversy, and then a bit a look at the concentration camps. So here is an article from Bleacher Report. Conflicting reports surround Daryl Morey's Rockets job after pro-Hong Kong tweet. There you go. And they're talking about that, and then he released an apology. "I did not intend my tweet to cause any offense to Rockets fans and friends of mine in China. I was merely voicing one thought based on one interpretation of one complicated event. I've had a lot of opportunities since, blah, blah, blah. I've learned more. I hope that all the Chinese sponsors and fans understand. My tweets are my own, don't represent the Rockets." Then the NBA issued a statement. "We recognize the views expressed by Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey have deeply offended many of our friends and fans in China, which is regrettable. Daryl made it clear his tweet doesn't represent the Rockets or the NBA. We have great respect for China, and we hope sports can use the unifying force to bridge cultural divides and bring people together." The owner of the Houston Rockets, billionaire Tillman Fertitta, said he doesn't speak for the Rockets or the NBA. "We're not a political organization." But then he said they're fine. The Chinese Basketball Association, headed by Yao Ming, suspended its partnership with the Rockets, where Yao Ming used to play, and on and on and on. And to this day, a couple of days later, The Chinese are still they're not broadcasting the exhibition games played by the Lakers and Nets on their Chinese TV stations there. They're canceling NBA Cares events supporting local community centers in China. China's taken a real super hardline crackdown approach on this. And part of it is I think they're really pissed off at the NBA, right? They're saying, what are you doing? We're business partners. You don't interfere in the domestic affairs of China. China says they've got over 600 million NBA basketball fans in China. They say they've got 300 million people playing basketball in China. And, these numbers may be inflated. There's certainly some corruption there that would indicate that. But at the same time, if the Chinese government orders, people to like this, then they're going to like it. Otherwise, they'll get in trouble. That's how communist China works. And yet, as NBA reporter and TV host and analyst Rachel Nichols, and a real sweet girl, a real cutie, a real friendly. She's got a great show called The Jump about the NBA on just about every weekday in the afternoons. She's reported that the number of fans that are coming to see the NBA players when they get off the bus or they go to a hotel or so on, that's been drastically reduced to just a handful when it used to be hundreds or even thousands. And then when the TV cameras came by, they didn't want to show their face in case they got in trouble with the communist Chinese government. So the Chinese government is very much in control. When you see stars like Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, LeBron James, and others, James Harden, going over to China, and you see a sea of a few hundred or a few thousand people cheering like crazy and going nuts and whatever, that's all part of the Chinese government's plan, right? And the NBA is great when it comes to being a distraction for the communist Chinese people from what their government is up to. It's also a great way, because China's got a lot of ambitions in Africa, to take over Africa by loaning them some money and then not having them be able to pay it back, and then taking some control over certain African countries' industries or resources, or corrupting leaders of African countries. This is going on right now as part of their Belt and Road Initiative, or China 2030 plan, to have most control over most of the world in the next 10 years. As part of that, celebrating the NBA is probably part of their sort of pro-black propaganda. When the Chinese, it's an ethno-state, they're often racist towards different ethnicities, not even just black. The Chinese and Koreans hate each other, and Japanese, and vice versa. Like, it's just, they're an ethno-state. So this might be part of getting them used to that and celebrating black culture as part of their taking over of Africa, and having that be a bigger part of the Chinese communist state moving forward. There's a number of reasons. But getting back to articles about this, here's an example of James Harden cucking, right? This is James Harden apologizes as controversy grows. Quote, "We love China," from ESPN News Services, October 6th, 2019. So you'd think James Harden, badass dude, 6'5", 230 pounds, solid, bear of a man, right? Amazing basketball player. And yet when it comes to China, he doesn't act like a man. He cucks up. And I understand why. It's not like, well, what'd you expect? It's like, no, but this is something the rest of us can learn from. And then if we push back on it, then you'll have more and more people speaking out against the horrible, evil, Nazi-like dictatorship of communist China. And it says here, Harden apologized. He spoke 3 days after Mori posted a now-deleted tweet that read, "Fight for our freedom, stand with Hong Kong." And this is James Harden, quote, "We apologize. We love China. We love playing there," Harden said. "For both of us individually, we go there once or twice a year. They show us the most important love." Right? That's what he said. He's like, we love China. And he says, we love everything that China's been about. We love everything they stand for. Here you go. It says here, quote, "We appreciate them as a fan base," Harden said. "We love everything there about them, and we appreciate the support they give us individually and as an organization." So that was James Harden's comment on this, and there's some more reactions in this article. But that gives you an example, right? You can't take these guys to be real heroes, right? They're heroes athletically. They're certainly hardworking and courageous in their own ways, and they're compensated for it. Harden makes $30+ million a year salary, or $40 million, plus probably that much in endorsements. So he's making $80-100 million a year, right, as a basketball player. But they're not men in the sense that men take a stand. Men fight for their people, their tribe. Men are providers and protectors, right? Because if they were, in this case, then they would be much more honest about what's going on in China. So you say, well, in this job at the NBA, you can't be a man just like in many other jobs. I get it, but that's why at manforwars.com, and there's other sources out there, in your spare time, definitely fight the online and offline information war to man up for your hood where you live. If at work you can't do it, I get it. But when you're not working, you can certainly do it, and you'll feel better for it, and other people will be better for it where you live, and your future will be better for it. So keep that in mind. And so this is an example of cuckery, right? We love everything about China. It's like, what? Are you crazy? So let's get into that. I've got an article here from Breitbart News, great news site for politics and pop culture info. And it says here from Breitbart News, concentration camp survivors, China using forced sterilization, abortion for genocide. And this is by Francis Martel from October 7th, 2019. And if you wonder why the people in Hong Kong are fighting so furiously against the communist Chinese government, then you can see this is why, right? If you wonder why these people from Hong Kong, Chinese people, just like Chinese people on the mainland in mainland China, they're both kind of technically the same. But Hong Kong had the history under the British of being a democracy and being free and being part of the British Empire. And then with the handover that came, I think about 20 years ago, from Britain to China, the Chinese made a deal. For the next 50 years, we're going to let Hong Kong still be a democracy. It's the one country, two systems rule. We're all Chinese. Hong Kong is now a Chinese protectorate, but as part of our deal with the British to manage Hong Kong, we're going to let Hong Kong be Hong Kong while we in China do our communist China thing, right? Now, China's violating that, and China's now trying to crack down on Hong Kong. It started off with them passing a law saying mainland communist China can arrest anybody in Hong Kong that they want to, and that's meant to crack down on pro-freedom, pro-democracy protesters. And then, once they crack down on all the dissidents, then they can come in and take it over. So the people of Hong Kong realized that, freaked out, and said, no way, this law is bad, and we've got 5 demands, including scrap that bad law where the communist Chinese can arrest any of us whenever they want to, get rid of the surveillance state, keep us free, investigate the police for their corruption as part of this process and the control by mainland communist China. So if you wonder why there's so many people in the streets, 2-3 million people in the streets of Hong Kong fighting against China, then this is why. And if you wonder why the woke NBA is cucking and how this is a perfect example of cucking, this is why. If you look at the people in Hong Kong, if you think as an NBA fan, well, so what? China can't be that bad. You know, it's just the NBA plays over there. They've got business interests with Tencent and other organizations, groups over there to broadcast NBA games. There's a lot of money. So don't say anything to screw up the money and screw up the relationship with China. They can't be that bad. Well, just look at what's happening with Hong Kong and how bad they're fighting not to be part of China. This isn't even like China's taking over a different group of people, like China's attacking Nigeria or Finland or Brazil or Portugal. They're all Chinese, and yet the Hong Kong Chinese are freaking out over possible control by mainland communist China, and there's damn good reasons for that. So I'll take you to this article, Concentration Camp Survivors, China Using Forced Sterilization, Abortion for Genocide, by Francis Martel from October 7th, 2019. And he says here, women who have survived China's concentration camps for Muslim ethnic minorities reported widespread rape, forced abortions, forced sterilization, and other extreme sexual human rights atrocities in accounts published this weekend. Speaking to the Washington Post, the women echo the experiences of others who have escaped the estimated thousands of concentration camps built in Xinjiang, China's largest and westernmost province, to house Uyghur, Kazakh, and Kyrgyz ethnic people. While survivors tend to be Kazakh, they can use their dual citizenship to escape to neighboring Kazakhstan. The majority of the 1 to 3 million people trapped in the camps are believed to be Uyghurs. Those who have survived have been able to use their marital status to citizens of Pakistan or other neighboring countries to place pressure on Beijing to release them. And keep in mind, there have been stories like this coming out for decades now, right? The Falun Gong, who you see in parks practicing Tai Chi, they are a persecuted group fighting against communist China. And they've been talking about the concentration camps, live organ harvesting, where they take organs out of people's bodies while they're still alive, forced sterilization, rapes, and so on. So the Falun Gong have been talking about this. The Epoch Times, EPOCH Times newspaper was basically founded by the Falun Gong, Falun Dafa, to battle against this. And they've done some amazing work for decades on how evil the communist Chinese government is. So don't just trust the Washington Post. Right, the Washington Post does some good work, does some really bad work, but you know, obviously they do some good work and gives them credibility, and journalists get to do good jobs, and then they can sell some lies as well. So it's not like everything they do is bad, but there's lots and lots of evidence going back decades of how bad communist China is. And when it comes to Xinjiang, China's largest and westernmost province, there's actually NBA training facilities being built there. So the NBA has a significant foothold in this province where they have concentration camps right next door to their NBA training camps. That's how bad this is. And basically the people that escaped, as it says here, if you know, all these different Uyghur, Kazakh, and Kyrgyz ethnic minorities in China, they were like, hey, I'm also Kazakhstani, so release me. So some of them escaped. Or some of them were like, I'm married to a Pakistani, so, you know, my wife, well, after I was scooped up and shoved in a concentration camp, complained to the Pakistan government, or vice versa, and they eventually got me out as an individual. So these are stories from survivors who were in these concentration camps. And it's important for NBA fans and people in general to realize just how bad China is. A lot of the controversy is over, well, you know, free speech, good, but Chinese business, you don't want to lose money, you know, blah, 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 blah. But wait a minute, how bad is China when it comes to this controversy? So back to this article. The nations themselves, like Pakistan and Kazakhstan, have not made any official statements condemning the Communist Party's attempt to eradicate ethnic minorities in Xinjiang, sometimes actively praising it, but have quietly helped individuals with the influence to get their attention. And yeah, picking a fight with China is dangerous, right? They're a big, badass communist dictatorship with tons of soldiers and nuclear weapons and economic and political power. But so was Hitler, right? And Hitler, the stuff that China's doing is just as bad as the stuff Hitler was doing back in the 1930s, 1940s. You could be like, Hitler bad, punch a Nazi. It's like, yeah, well, this is the Hitler today. Communist China is the modern day Hitler of today. And we can't allow them to get so powerful that they eclipse the rest of the Western world in terms of their power, as fueled and funded by the rest of the world, and then the rest of the world starts to reflect more of what communist China's like as they take over as the global role model from the United States with their ideals of freedom and prosperity, and everybody has a chance to live the American dream and make it. People wanted that worldwide. The globalist super rich people that built up China, that want a world government under the UN and so on, they are pushing for China to be the role model, because then they'll have a total global communist surveillance state and control the world, and nationalists in different countries are trying to fight against them. Now, there's some bad people on both sides, good people on both sides, but the bottom line is that nationalists fight to preserve their countries, borders, sovereignty, culture, and so on. They're the ones defending us against this evil. If you go on the radical left, you end up in communist China. If you take the right, maybe not super radical, but certainly the more conservative, we got to preserve what works, what we like, what makes people happy position, then there's a chance you can stop that. So it's good to sort of understand and frame that as well. Back to this article. Camp survivors have previously testified to extreme torture, killings, live organ harvesting, infanticide, and slavery in the camps. An Associated Press AP report published last year revealed that some clothes made in slave facilities in the concentration camps made its way to America. So yeah, this is a great chance for all of us to learn just how bad China's been when our media was often controlled by them, right? The deal with the globalists was made: we'll build you up to be the manufacturer of the world, we'll buy cheap stuff from you, we'll give you dollars, American, Canadian, other dollars, and then you'll use those dollars to buy us, right? So it's a soft form of subversion where we send them money for cheap goods, they use that money and come here, and they buy all the houses. And then real estate goes up in Vancouver, Canada, in Toronto, Canada, and local people can't afford it anymore. They buy tons of businesses or interests in tons of businesses. They buy ports when it comes to shipping. They buy Hollywood. They buy news organizations. They just invest all this cash in all these organizations, and they're the ones suppressing criticism of China, and they're the ones venerating China and celebrating China and saying we should all love China. Isn't China great? Aren't they a great success story, right? So that's how the process works, and that's what we're battling against today, to sort of expose that. So back to this article. Quote, any woman or man under age 35 was raped and sexually abused. Ruki Perhat, a student arrested in Xinjiang in 2009 for 4 years, told the Post. More recent survivors say the camps had made rape more systematic than in regular prisons. The guards would, quote, put bags on the heads of the ones they wanted, unquote, and take the woman out of their cells to be raped all night, return for their fellow prisoners to see in the morning. One human rights activist told the Post they had documented at least 7 cases of women being forced against their will to receive intrauterine devices as part of their entering the concentration camp, presumably to keep them from getting pregnant through rape. So there you go. So for all the Me Too movement fans out there, although we love women, we care for women, we believe all women, even if they're allegations from 40 years ago at a college party that nobody else can remember, that nobody has any proof of, you got to believe that woman. Well, what about these women, and men for that matter, being systematically raped, right? The guards see a woman out there, they're like, I want to rape that one tonight. Okay, great. We'll throw a bag over her head, drag her to your room, you can rape her all night, and tomorrow once you're done with her, we'll drop her off back with the other prisoners to scare the rest of them into compliance. What about that? Is that not a Me Too moment? That's going on all the time in China, according to one dissident. And again, there's many, many stories like this. So you can see the hypocrisy of the quote-unquote woke culture and where it comes from, right? The woke culture is a subversive, criticize your own country, criticize your own people, criticize all men, criticize this, divide and conquer, show division and confusion, right? And yet don't talk about China. Don't talk about China. On Twitter, don't talk about China. In the media, don't talk about China. Don't talk about what they're doing. We're really bad. And that's a plan to take down the West and bring up China, right? So that's the bigger picture. It's wrong when there's rape in America or the West. It's wrong when there's rape in China. But always talking about rape in the West and overblowing the problem and demonizing everybody as being victims of this problem, and then not talking about it happening in China because of political correctness and financial and political pressures on the topic, that is the worst crime, right? That's worse. So back to this article. Those who are arrested while pregnant, often for, quote, crimes like downloading the messaging application WhatsApp, were forced into harrowing abortion. So think about it. You're in China. You download WhatsApp so you can talk to friends on WhatsApp. You get arrested. You get thrown in a concentration camp. You get repeatedly beaten, propagandized, raped, and possibly murdered, or used as slave labor to make clothes for the West. That's how bad China is. And we've known about this stuff. I mean, Apple the maker of the iPhone and whatever, they installed nets to catch people outside of the windows of their Foxconn, iPhone, and Apple slave labor factories because they had a problem with people working in those factories, overworked, abused while working, and paid almost no money, and possibly having to live in a small cubbyhole at the same factory. So you finish work, you crawl over there, you go to sleep, you get back up, you go back to work for 12, 15 hours the next day. Some of those people were jumping to their deaths out of windows at the factory. So instead of improving the conditions for the workers, what did Apple and their Foxconn Chinese factories do? They put nets there. Now if you try and jump to your death, this sucks, I want to die. Crap, I got caught in a big net meant for, trapeze artists, and I'll get arrested, I'll get prosecuted for trying to kill myself instead of work, or I'll just be sent back to work in horrible conditions that made me want to kill myself. So we know, and it's good for those points to be made when it comes to China. The real, not just the glossing over. The media coverage, the mainstream media coverage, the NBA coverage is glossing over how bad China is in talking about whether or not it should be okay to condemn them and so on. And so, for example, back to this article, Gulzira Mogdin told the Washington Post that Chinese regime officials slashed her open without anesthesia and, quote, cut my fetus out. Can you imagine? This woman gets pregnant because she's raped by corrupt prison guards in communist China, and they slashed her open, cut open her belly without anesthesia. Didn't even knock her out. And they cut out her penis, put it back in, sewed her shut. She must have been screaming like crazy during this whole ordeal or biting down on something, wishing that she was dead. This is communist China. This is not about the Chinese people. You want to find nice Chinese people? There's probably some in communist China. There's definitely some in Hong Kong, right? That's the natural character of the Chinese people. Hardworking, just the stereotypes, good ones, some good and bad people, obviously, but that's China. But when it comes to criticizing the Chinese communist government, who are officially okay with this, this is not some serial killer had a fetish for pregnant women, kidnapped them and cut them open and took their fetuses. This is Chinese communist Chinese government policy at their prison camps for people that weren't even that bad, that didn't do anything. They didn't try and harm anybody else. They didn't try and rob anybody or nothing like that, or rape or murder. This was because they violated Chinese policies against using WhatsApp or social media or something other innocuous. Or they were praying, they were Christians, or they were Muslim Uyghurs, right? They have their own Muslim faith there. The Kazakhs, the Kyrgyz, they were arrested for that. And this is how they're treated, right? So if you want to say arrested for that's bad enough, look at how they're treated after they're arrested. This is what is being fought against by the Hong Kong people, and this is what we should condemn, and this is the type of information that's being censored by the Chinese-controlled mainstream media out there talking about this story. So back to this article from Breitbart News about a Washington Post article, as well as some of their other understanding they bring to this. The Washington Post testimonies echo those of other survivors who have endured sexual human rights violations and the killing of their unborn children. Many have also stated that the Chinese officials violated their bodily integrity in other ways, such as conducting medical examinations to prepare them for organ harvesting. Yeah, if you're a rich Chinese businessman and you want an extra lung or extra kidneys, or you need one or whatever, this is where they get them. They get them. Or if you look at I went a few years ago with a girlfriend to this, the Body Works exhibit, right? It was kind of gross, kind of fascinating, but kind of gross, where they found some way using some colorless plastic formula to preserve human bodies so they wouldn't decay and rot and smell in front of you. And they put them on display in various forms of mutilation, right? So they cut off half a face and show you what half a face looks like underneath the skin. They'd cut open a body and show you what the inner organs look like. And these were real people that supposedly had signed over their bodies after they died to be used for medical experiments or whatever, but in reality were probably members of this concentration camp, right? And I remember seeing the exhibits, and a lot of these people were fairly short, right? They weren't huge, a couple bigger ones, but they were short, like 5'3", 5'4", 5'6", not like 6 foot, 6'6", or anything like that, right? And so I would think, in looking back on it now, that a lot of them might have been concentration camp victims that were specifically chosen for this purpose, right? And then when it comes to the rich Chinese businessmen, hey, if they can just order a new kidneys. Here's my blood type, here's my DNA, see if you can find someone compatible. And then when you go to a concentration camp, they take your blood, they check your DNA, they check all your organs, they match their list. Oh, look at that. Billionaire Chinese guy needs a new kidney. You, prisoner number 1234777, right? Come over here. And then they take their organs while the guy's still alive. They don't kill him first, right? Then maybe they don't kill him at all, right? They take them while they're still alive, sometimes while they're not under anesthetic, just like that woman's fetus was cut out of her stomach, right? Because it keeps the organ fresher. It's like we got a fresh kidney from a live, healthy body, and we put it on ice, and then we shipped it over there as fast as we could, not a decaying kidney from somebody who was in a car accident, tried to operate, blah, 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 guy died, a few hours later, take the organ, but it's like, no, this is fresh. And China was actually caught having way more organ transplants than they had paperwork for them. And that's how this process, in part of how this process was exposed. Excuse me. Back to this article. Marigold Turson, camp survivor, testified last year that Chinese authorities killed one of her infant triplets upon imprisoning her. The death occurred while children were with Chinese authorities forcibly taken for her. She told reporters she believed the child died of force feeding. So they took her kids, they killed one of them, possibly by trying to force feed them. And this anti-human attitude is part of what's invading Western cultures as well, right? The idea that that people in the NBA shouldn't be able to criticize China is part of this anti-human culture and other aspects of anti-human culture, right? In China, you know, I've heard from friends who've been there, for example, people just walk around, heads down, bumping into each other, afraid to look up, cameras everywhere, you know, don't look anybody in the eye, don't be seen as suspicious, and they're literally bumping into each other on the crowded streets of certain Chinese cities, right? No apologies, no excuse me, no nothing, just bump into each other, keep it moving, right? That attitude is now coming to the West, where there's no more ladies and gentlemen. You can't be a masculine man with masculine confidence, strength, meeting and confirming the same. We know we're cool. Don't lie, look each other in the eye. Straight up guys, whatever. And then graceful, feminine girls, be a little nicer, a little more space. They're a little nicer, put you both in a good mood. Nice ladies and gentlemen, where confident masculinity makes a safe space for confident feminine vulnerability, so they can be relaxed and attractive in good company. All of that is being attacked as part of this anti-human agenda, where we're now starting to sort of bump into each other, not apologize, passive-aggressive, annoying, you know, lying, bitchy, sketchy bullshit going on out there that I've documented extensively at manforwars.com, making it impossible for us to respect each other and communicate well. And so that's something we've got to fight against, and this is part of that process, right? And in China, they even say they'll have a dead body on the street, and it'll just be laying there. And in other third world countries too, where the price of life is often cheap. And people won't say or do anything. They'll just mind their business, right? It's supposed to be a dead body in Canada or America or another Western country. Everyone's freaking out. Oh my God, dead body laying on the ground. What happened? Call the police. Get something. Get it out of here. So in more pro-human cultures, you're more nice, ladies and gents. You're less likely to see bad things happen and allow bad things to happen to you or other people near you where you live, right? And in less human cultures, you're less likely to be ladies and gents with self-respect who respect each other and communicate well, so you're easier to control. And you're less likely to care about the value of human life in general, and it's expressed in a variety of ways. So this is part of what we're fighting against, is that whole kind of beast system where if we don't go, well, no, if we don't condemn China, then and we allow China to continue taking control over our countries through one way or another and suppressing criticism of them and elevating them in status, making us all celebrate China, especially communist China, not the ancient Chinese culture and people, but the communist Chinese government in its current incarnation, then more of that anti-human behavior will show up here, right? So laws that are in favor of suicide, right, where they say medically assisted suicide. Now, typically, in Western cultures developed by Christianity, that's a huge sin. You should never encourage anybody to take their own life. But as part of the dehumanization process, as part of China taking more and more control over our media, as part of this being something that is normalized, where it's not just fatal illness and about to die, you're like a week away from death, you've got Alzheimer's, and you're in just insane pain. Okay, fine. Now it's just if you're depressed. Now it's just if you think the weather's going to be bad in 20 years, you're encouraged to kill yourself, right? This is all part of this process, part of this dehumanization. It says here, an unnamed Kazakh concentration camp survivor testified to forced birth control accompanying the systematic use of rape to torture women at the camps. Quote, young girls are taken out and raped all night long. If you keep resisting, they will inject you with something and kill you, the woman told the Epoch Times. There are usually 40 to 50 people in one small room, but 5 to 10 are regularly taken out and they just disappear. They never come back. People are being killed in tens all the time. So there you have it. This is a courtesy of a survivor to the Epoch Times. So this is just a fact. They take a young girl, they rape you all night. If you resist, they kill you. And people are just killed, just gone. It's like, okay, we all showed up at the concentration camp. We're all here. What's our uniform? What's our schedule? Oh, hey, Dave, how's it going? Oh, good, Bob. And then next day, where'd Dave go? Dave's just gone. He's just gone. He's disappeared and killed. Right? So if you're not completely compliant with this agenda, death. Right? So your choices are torture or death in communist China. That's why they're the new Nazis. Right? Back to this article. So this is beyond the Washington Post. It's also Breitbart News is citing the Epoch Times and here Radio Free Asia. Speaking to Radio Free Asia, RFA last month, Zumurat Dawood described her forced sterilization in a concentration camp. Dawood escaped because her husband, a Pakistani national, petitioned his government to intervene. Quote, the family planning office gave me a letter and said, quote, come back on the date stated in the letter and we will offer you a free operation to stop you from becoming pregnant, she told the outlet. On hearing this, my husband pleaded, does she have to undergo this procedure? They said, if you don't comply, it will affect your entry back into the country in the future, also your children's schooling. Right? So this is how the communist government makes them comply. They're like, okay, we're gonna put you in a concentration camp, right? And you need to be sterilized. And her husband's like, does she have to? And they're like, well, you won't be able to come back into China, and your kid's school might be screwed up. We've got ways of making you not talk. So she says here, on the day of my operation, I was taken inside the operating room. All I remember was that I was given an infusion. When I opened my eyes, there was no medical staff, doctors, or nurses. It was a very cold day, and I was covered with only a thin bed sheet, she noted. Quote, no one was allowed to visit from outside. When I looked around, I heard other women moaning from pain. Once the effect of the anesthetic wore off, I felt a sharp pain in my lower abdominal. Dawood added, in the camp, she was forced to strip naked in front of multiple male officers and forced to take drugs that made her become numb emotionally and prevented her menstrual cycle from naturally taking place. She also underwent organ testing to see if doctors could harvest them for profit, she said. And keep in mind, as part of not criticizing China and putting profit above everything else, China does that too, right? They're corrupting all of us in the West and NBA fans by getting us to go along with not criticizing China and understanding why the NBA and people who work with and for the NBA don't want to, right? But this is the opposite of that, right? If you take that, well, you got to make money over there. It's China. They do their own thing. Don't say anything. If you take that to the opposite, then you've got the mass corruption in China of doctors medical professionals, government staff, and everything. And this is part of how you dehumanize a captured people, right? You've got to keep them dehumanized. If the people fight for freedom, like the people in Hong Kong, the courageous people in Hong Kong, they fight for freedom when they have good connections to each other, when they value each other and they value humanity. When they, you couldn't say to the average Chinese guy in Hong Kong, hey, I want you to, take that guy and take out his organs and sell them because some billionaire is going to give us $50,000 for the organ and you'll make $5,000 off it. What do you say? Typical humane, possibly Christian raised Hong Kong person goes, no way, forget it. No way. That's insane. That's wrong. I'd never do it. I'd never want to do that to somebody. You take that same Chinese person in Hong Kong and you put him in communist China, sure, boss. That's also why they want to get rid of God. If you get rid of God, then there's nobody above you to say don't torture and rape and murder that guy. Don't cut out that guy's organs and try and sell them to make a couple of bucks, right? That's another reason why the atheistic communist Chinese state is cracking down so hard on religion, whether it's the Muslim Uyghur religion or Christianity, shutting down churches, stopping people from meeting and praying, getting rid of the Ten Commandments and replacing them with quotes from current Chinese President Xi, right? This is tricky business. And yet there is a negotiation, right? But we have to push back against this, right? I get it. When the NBA and Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, is trying to navigate the values they promote of freedom, free speech, and not censoring people, and yet the importance of the business relationships they have with China and all of the NBA's partners making money off this, and the value of those relationships, which shouldn't be insulted either, right? However, this is ultimately where it goes. And even President Donald Trump talking about, I'm very good friends with President Xi. I hope he does the right thing when it comes to Hong Kong. Congratulations to the Communist Party on their anniversary. Some of that stuff I understand and like. Some of that stuff I absolutely hate. But it's a delicate negotiating position when you're the President of the United States and you're dealing with Communist China and you're trying to negotiate tough with them to get rid of the trade deficit that's been screwing over your country for years, but also negotiate in a positive way, right? Especially because Communist China is just like one big crazy serial killer, right? If you decide not to negotiate with them, they might go nuts on their own people or go nuts on you. So it is a dangerous situation, and yet it's one we should all be fighting to expose and not covering up. Like, this can't just be yesterday's news. This is a chance when it comes to this NBA controversy to red pill millions or even billions of NBA fans around the world about just how bad China is, right? Like, why is Hong Kong fighting so bad? I get it. They don't want to be communist Chinese. No, but what really are they fighting against, right? They're all Chinese. What really are they fighting? This is what they're fighting against. A government that would normalize this evil. So back to this article, it says here, human rights activists, journalists, and whistleblowers have testified for years to China's policy of cutting open political prisoners to extract their organs while alive without anesthesia and sell them to willing buyers. Speculation first arose when observers noted that the number of organ transplants conducted in China was far greater than the official existing list of organ donors, leaving unclear how the remaining transplants were conducted without organs. Ooh, wink, wink. What are you doing? Where are you getting the organs from? There's official organ donor lists. There's people that die in accidents or of natural causes that want to have their body parts used to help other people. We get it. But where'd the rest of them come from? Oh, concentration camps where you do this to people. In 2014, Enver Tohti testified to cutting organs out of a live political prisoner in Urumqi, the Xinjiang capital. Tohti told the China Tribunal, a coalition of international legal experts investigating the Xinjiang camps, that he believed China was preparing to conduct these operations on Uyghurs and others imprisoned in Xinjiang. So this guy in 2014, 5 years ago, testified to cutting organs out of a live political prisoner. Political prisoner. You wonder why the Hong Kong people freaked out over mainland China trying to get Hong Kong to pass a law saying mainland China could arrest anyone they want. It's because this is what happens to even political prisoners. Not people that did bad things to other people, but people trying to fight for freedom and their political points of view. China has traditionally reserved the torturous operation for use on practitioners of Falun Gong, a spiritual movement that it considers a dangerous anti-communist cult. Juher Ilham, daughter of imprisoned Uyghur scholar Ilham Todi, similarly accused China of live organ harvesting against her people in July. Quote, they harvest prisoners' organs for sale at the airport. There's now a fast-track security lane for organs to pass. This is how normal it gets. This is what I'm saying about communist China. It's not just some creepy, corrupt doctors getting away with it. This is official communist Chinese government policy. Normally, you'd have creepy weirdo like in the U.S. Planned Parenthood's been caught selling, aborted baby parts for sale and trying to keep babies alive so the parts are fresher. And this is a group of corrupt doctors inside Planned Parenthood caught with undercover video footage by undercover reporters talking about this stuff and doing all sorts of horrible things with the baby body parts, really dehumanizing themselves and the process of abortion there, right? But the government in the U.S. is supposed to crack down on those people and stop that stuff from happening. The government in communist China is behind this stuff happening. That's the big difference between communist China and some corrupt people in a generally free America, for example, where the government is supposed to keep that from happening. In China, the government makes that happen, whether people like it or not, on both sides of it. If you're a political prisoner, obviously you don't want your organs to be harvested and sold to some rich person for someone else to profit. If you're a prison guard, you may not want to cut out that guy's organs or beat or rape or murder anybody, but your state is insisting that you do, right? The Washington Post noted that activists have called these practices, quote, genocide. The official international legal definition of genocide lists, quote, imposing measures intended to prevent births on a, quote, national, ethnic, racial, or religious group to bring out its physical destruction. And this is what they're doing to 2 or 3 million Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps. What about all the pro-Muslim people in the West? What about all the don't be Islamophobic? Well, what's more Islamophobic than throwing millions of Muslims in concentration camps in China and beating and raping and murdering them and using them for slave labor and harvesting their organs? I can't think of anything more Islamophobic than that in terms of attacking Islam or Muslim people. Where's the condemnation? The woke NBA and other woke people don't talk about it, right? Because a lot of those woke groups are controlled in some part by globalist, super rich, evil people that are backing China's rise, or by literal communist Chinese investment in the media, activism, other arms, saying, don't say this stuff, it brings shame to China. It's like, yeah, it brings shame to China, you should stop. No, don't talk about it. The talking about it brings shame to China. The doing it is just what we do. That's their attitude. So back to this article, the issue of genocide in China came to the forefront of the sports world on Sunday evening when the NBA forced Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey to effusively apologize to the communist regime for posting a mild statement of support for the anti-communist protests in Hong Kong on social media. The NBA also apologized to China, triggering a stern response from the World Uyghur Congress, an international organization fighting for human rights in Xinjiang and elsewhere. Quote, the NBA has a dismal record of silence and self-censorship on human rights in China, the World Uyghur Congress said in a statement on Twitter, noting that the NBA established a training camp in Xinjiang that profits the communist regime without challenging the existence of concentration camps there. Quote, the NBA's willingness to appease China and overlook its abhorrent behavior contradicts the core values and business standards it claims to espouse, the organization observed. And again, that's by Francis Martel from Breitbart News. So I just wanted to make that clear. Like I said, the title is Vlog, the woke NBA cucks, and just how bad are communist Chinese concentration camps anyway. This is something important. And this, with the stickiness of the NBA and our love for basketball, pop culture, sports, celebrity, and so on, with the stickiness of the NBA attached to this and the right information, this could really, as I said, red pill millions or billions of people around the world into being more informed about China, taking more of a stand, and not being fooled by the sort of fake woke or faux woke policies of the NBA and other big organizations and corporations when it comes to their double standards of bitching about the 25 people a year, 25 black guys a year that get killed by cops, right? Which is not, or unfairly killed by cops, which is not good. Certainly should try and stop that. When it comes to like 25 black people a year killed unfairly and unnecessarily by cops, innocent black guys, happens, shouldn't happen. Compare that to the millions in concentration camps in China and the NBA going, I don't know, I don't want to say anything. They might get offended. It's like, come on, that's total hypocrisy. And that shows you how woke is a joke, at least in the common mainstream understanding of it. And there you have it, right? So just how bad are they? That's how bad they are. And that's why we should all get informed and empowered on these issues and get the word out there. And on that, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, post any clips of my work that you think are valuable. Get in touch with questions or answers or ideas to work together or financial support. If you want to discuss any of these issues in a short conversation, happy to have that with you as opposed to simply leaving a comment. And you could do it anonymously or audio only or audio video and get it out there just to expand, because I see a lot of the comments here and there and they're getting shorter and shorter and snarkier and bitchier and blurtier, and it doesn't seem like that's encouraging us to express ourselves well. So I want to make sure I'm pushing for that. Otherwise, Black Krishna or BK at manforwars.com. Hope this helps, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.